This video explains the person-centered planning process and requirements for planning and the Person-Centered Support Plan, or PCSP. Your role as a support coordinator is to foster self-determination for individuals with disabilities, in part through facilitation of the Person-Centered Planning, or PCP, process. According to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS, person-centered planning is a method of assisting individuals who need services and supports to construct and describe what they want and need to bring purpose and meaning to their life. The individual's services and supports should help them reach their vision of a good life, which includes their expressed goals, needs, and desires, both what is important to the person and important for them to achieve the life they want to live. Quality person-centered planning consists of 4 elements: philosophy, believing that individuals have the fundamental right to maximum self-determination and community inclusion. Process, interacting with individuals before, during, and after person-centered planning meetings in a manner that communicates respect and a hopeful vision for the future. Plan, translating person-centered philosophy and process into a high-quality written service planning document. Purpose, ensuring that the person-centered planning process helps individuals in getting what they want out of life. While the person-centered planning process may look different from person to person, there are some requirements that must be met for all individuals. The first requirement is that the individual will lead the person-centered planning process where possible. The individual's representative should have a participatory role as needed and as defined by the individual, unless state law confers decision-making authority to the legal representative. It is your role as a support coordinator to assist the individual in leading the person-centered planning meeting to the extent they desire. In addition to being led by the individual receiving services and supports, the person-centered planning process must include people chosen by the individual, provide necessary information and support to ensure that the individual directs the process to the maximum extent possible and is enabled to make informed choices and decisions. Be timely and occur at times and locations of convenience to the individual. Reflect cultural considerations of the individual and be conducted by providing information in plain language and in a manner that is accessible to individuals with disabilities and persons who are limited English proficient. Include strategies for solving conflict or disagreement within the process, including clear conflict of interest guidelines for all planning participants. Offer informed choices to the individual regarding the services and supports they receive and from whom. Include a method for the individual to request updates to the plan as needed, and record the alternative home and community-based settings that were considered by the individual. Person-centered planning does not mean that the individual gets everything they want, as sometimes we desire things that are not feasible or could potentially harm the health and safety of ourselves or others. However, while choices and preferences may not always be granted, they should always be acknowledged and respected. There are times when you, as a support coordinator, may need to balance preservations of safety with the individual's dignity of risk. According to CMS, the dignity of risk is the idea that self-determination and the right to take reasonable risks are essential for the individual's dignity and self-esteem, and so should not be impeded by caregivers who are concerned about their responsibility to ensure health and welfare. Person-centered planning should lead to individuals having control over the lives they have chosen for themselves, being recognized and valued for their contributions, past, current, and potential, to their communities, and living the lives they want. The person-centered planning process consists of 3 stages: pre-planning, the person-centered planning meeting, and implementation and post-plan monitoring. Pre-planning includes gathering the necessary resources and information about an individual in order to conduct an effective person-centered planning meeting. Some of the activities that can be done during pre-planning include identifying who should attend the person-centered planning meeting, otherwise known as the individual's person-centered support team, or PCST, preparing an agenda, assisting the individual in leading their meeting to the fullest extent possible, and completing some person-centered tools. At DSPD, we encourage using some of the tools from the Charting the Life course framework throughout all stages of the person-centered planning process. DSPD utilizes the Charting the Life course framework to support the implementation of person-centered planning and practice. Specifically, DSPD emphasizes the principles of life stages and life domains to support planning that is holistic and focused on thinking about the present and future. The Charting the Life course tools can be found at www.lifecoursetools.com. Once pre-planning activities have been completed, it is time for the person-centered planning meeting. The main focus of the person-centered planning meeting is to discuss an individual's hopes and dreams and structure services and supports to assist them in achieving their goals. The person-centered planning meeting is person-driven, meaning that it focuses on what is important to the individual and accommodates the individual's preferred communication and interaction style. A major function and outcome of the person-centered planning meeting is identifying and planning the steps to help the individual experience their good life. Towards the end of the person-centered planning meeting, take the time to summarize what was accomplished, what needs to happen next, and who is doing what. You should have decided and agreed upon goals in the action plan with the individual and the person-centered support team. Members of the person-centered support team should walk away from the planning meeting with meaningful, clear, and tangible roles in regards to the individual's life. The person-centered planning process leads to the creation of a person-centered support plan, or PCSP, which must reflect the services and supports that are important for the individual to meet the needs identified through an assessment of functional need, as well as what is important to the individual with regard to preferences for the delivery of such services and supports. The written person-centered support plan must reflect that the setting in which the individual resides is chosen by the individual, reflect the individual's strengths and preferences, reflect clinical and support needs as identified through an assessment of functional need, include individually identified goals and desired outcomes, reflect the services and supports, paid and unpaid, that will assist the individual to achieve identified goals, and the providers of those services and supports, including natural supports. Be understandable to the individual receiving services and supports and the individuals important in supporting them. At a minimum, for the written plan to be understandable, it must be written in plain language and in a manner that is accessible to individuals with disabilities and persons who are limited English proficient. Identify the individual and/or entity responsible for monitoring the plan. Be finalized and agreed to with the informed consent of the individual in writing and signed by all individuals and providers responsible for its implementation. Be distributed to the individual and other people involved in the plan. Include those services, the purpose or control of which the individual elects to self-direct. Prevent the provision of unnecessary or inappropriate services and supports, and document that any rights restriction or modification must be supported by a specific assessed need and justified in the person-centered support plan. The following requirements for a rights restriction or modification must be documented in the person-centered support plan. Identify a specific and individualized assessed need. Document the positive interventions and supports used prior to any rights restrictions or modifications to the person-centered support plan. Document less intrusive methods of meeting the need that have been tried but did not work. Include a clear description of the condition that is directly proportionate to the specific assessed need. Include a regular collection and review of data to measure the ongoing effectiveness of the rights restriction or modification. Include established time limits for periodic reviews to determine if the rights restriction or modification is still necessary or can be terminated. Include informed consent of the individual. And include an assurance that interventions and supports will cause no harm to the individual. For further information on rights restrictions or modifications, see Division Directive 1.1. Person-centered planning does not end after the person-centered support plan has been finalized and agreed to by the individual. As a support coordinator, it is your role to help ensure that the person-centered support plan continues to meet the needs and wants of the individual. To this end, you will conduct on-site, face-to-face visits with the individual in order to monitor, review, and evaluate the services afforded to the individual pursuant to their person-centered support plan in order to ensure that services are delivered in the quantity and quality intended and that the services resulted in the intended outcomes. The individual's services and supports should help the individual achieve their vision of a good life and should therefore be modified as needed if they are not fulfilling that purpose. Over the course of the plan cycle, the person-centered support plan may need to be amended due to changes to the individual's needs or desires, or in response to certain life events or circumstances. In these situations, you should not wait to make changes until the next plan cycle and instead coordinate with the individual and their person-centered support team to amend the person-centered support plan. You can find more information about the person-centered planning process on the DSPD website at dspd.utah.gov.